Hello, and welcome to this tutorial video on JPAD Modeller. Today we will explore the features of the Nacelles and Powerplant Input tab. In this section of the user interface, you can define the main characteristics of the propulsion system, both in terms of size and general performance. You can even add and customize detailed infos about the performance and emissions of your engine, but we will get to that shortly. At the top of this tab, you have a choice box, which allows you to navigate through the set of engines of your aircraft model. Remember, you can add or remove engines from the powerplant group directly from the aircraft tab, by clicking on the dedicated buttons. You can rapidly update the characteristics of one engine, by selecting an engine from the copy data from choice box, and by cloning those infos. In this way, you won't need to add information again for a new engine which has the same characteristics of an already loaded engine. In the Global Data section you can specify the engine type, which will eventually enable and disable some of the fields that you can fill in this tab. As already mentioned, you can provide an engine database file, by simply selecting one provided by JPAD Modeller by default. And you can eventually customize the database file by clicking on the Detail button. More will be said about these features in a separate video tutorial, which are highly recommended to not miss. The Global Data section also allows you to define the characteristics of the engine in terms of length. For a turbofan engine, the length is the nacelle cowl length. For a turboprop or a piston engine, the length is the nacelle overall length. You can also estimate the value of this variable, by clicking on the Calculate button. This estimation is statistically based on the static thrust, or on power of the engine, depending on the engine type. Moreover, but only for piston and turboprop engines, you can specify the tip diameter of the propeller. You can set the static performance characteristics of the engine in the Specifications tab. Here you can assign also the dry mass, the bypass ratio, and the number of propeller blades. These last two fields will be eventually enabled, depending on the engine type. As for the engine length, you can statistically estimate the dry mass starting from the static performance characteristics, by clicking on the Calculate button. The last section of the Nacelles and Powerplant tab is completely dedicated to nacelles' geometrical characteristics. As for the engines, you can rapidly set all the features of a new nacelle by copying them from a pre-existing one, by selecting the nacelle from the dedicated drop-down menu. The nacelle maximum diameter is the parameter driving the overall dimension of the nacelle. You can have JPAD Modeller estimate the diameter for you, following the same statistical approach already described for the engine length and dry mass. The remaining characteristics of the nacelle are the inlet diameter, the outlet diameter, the maximum diameter longitudinal position, and the outlet diameter offset. These can be defined through scale factors with respect to the nacelle maximum diameter. You can find detailed infos about how these scale factors operate by clicking on the Info button on the right. By clicking on the double arrow in the top right corner of the Nacelles and Powerplant tab, you have access to the top view, the side view, and the front view of the nacelles. You can eventually save these drawings, by right-clicking on the image. Moreover, the lower portion of this tab will give you a summary of the powerplant main characteristics. In the next video, we will go more into the details of the engine deck manager of JPAD Modeller. So, see you there.